here in Crater Lake. And today I'm going to be talking to you about the mysteries of Crater Lake. See, I even have a sign. I'm happy to take questions at any time as long as they're somewhat pertinent to what I'm talking about. If I happen to be talking about the Crater Lake monster, don't ask me about Smokey Bear, okay? Because they're completely unrelated. But I'll be happy to take any questions during the talk or after the talk on any subjects at that point. Okay? So why do you guys come here today? Because you want to see this beautiful blue lake, didn't you? Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you something about fire ecology. Just for a moment. In case you don't know, we have a big fire going on about 45 miles away from us, an immigrant fire. And about every third day it sends its smoke over this way. Today we got lucky. We didn't get smoke, we got clouds, but no smoke. So we hope that the smoke will continue to blow the other way. But I thought I'd talk just a little bit about fires in our park and in the western United States in general. Well, back about 100 years ago, a fella came along. His name was Smokey Bear, okay? And he told us prevent forest fires. So we prevented a lot of forest fires. What happened then is that we had a lot of debris building up in the forests. And now when we do get a fire, they become a bad fire, like this. Okay? There's just too much debris built up in our forests, in our park, in the national forest, on private forests too. And you get really bad fires because there's too much debris. Our forests and our park in particular are meant to burn every 30 to 80 years. That's the ecology of these forests. Lightning caused fires, man-made fires. The Native Americans that lived up around here for 10,000 years, they would intentionally light fires to burn away the underbrush so it's easier for them to hunt, so that berries would be easier to pick, and just so they could walk through the forest a little bit easier. They weren't so overgrown. Then Smokey Bear tells us, no, don't do that. Stop your fires. So we stop the fires. Now we have an overgrown forest. So this is what we'd like a fire to look like. A ground fire that's burning debris along the forest floor. It's fairly low intensity. A small chance of it climbing up into the tree and killing the tree. Okay? But instead, we get a lot of these type of fires nowadays. Okay? So one of the things that we're doing here in the park is you may have seen some of these brush piles alongside the road as you came in from either the south entrance, north entrance. And these are brush piles. We collect debris along the forest floor, maybe going back 100, maybe 150 feet from the road corridors. We pile them up, and then this winter, if the weather is correct, after we get 6 or 8 inches of snow, we'll light these piles on fire in place, and they will burn, and you will have ash return to the soil. And so next year, when you were to come by, it would look like a nice, clean forest floor. So if a fire were to start along the road corridors, we could put it out very quickly before it got bad. Okay? That's fire ecology. Now we get to the fun part. Mysteries of Crater Lake. So here I'm going to talk about things that you see out here in front of you. If any of you have just even taken a walk along the pathway, or gone on a boat tour, or maybe a trolley tour, you would have seen some of these things, and maybe they weren't easy to figure out how did they get there? What happened to make it that way? Well, let's go back for a moment and tell you, how did this lake become to be? Why is it here? Well, we had a volcano that was growing for the last 400,000 years. We'll call it Mount Mazama. And it was growing, growing. Eruption about every 10,000 years. It would put another layer, and it grew up to be about 12,000 feet tall. It would have looked like maybe Mount Hood or Mount Rainier or Mount Shasta. All these volcanoes are in the Cascade Range. That goes from Northern California on up to British Columbia. And they're all of volcanic origin, which means that molten magma from deep down in the earth, maybe 4 miles down, gets shot up through high pressure, through cracks and crevices and dikes and fissures in the earth, and then they come up as an eruption. So we had this going on out here for 400,000 years. And the volcano eventually built itself up to 12,000 feet. And then 7,700 years ago, decided to have a big eruption. One of the biggest eruptions in North America in the last 500,000 years. About 100 times as big as Mount St. Helens. You guys are old enough to remember 1980 and Mount St. Helens. Most of you. You might not. You're the youngster here today.
I was born in the 70s.
Okay. You fooled me. So, she's a good hiker. So anyhow, 1980, Mount St. Helens had a big explosion. Ours was 100 times as big when Mount Mazama blew up. Okay? It had such a big eruption that the magma chamber, which was 4 miles underneath our mountain, got emptied out in a matter of a few days. And then there was nothing left underneath this mountain to support it. There's a hollowed out area where all this magma used to be. Our mountain collapsed. It collapsed down 7,000 feet in a matter of hours, is what the geologists tell us. So from a 12,000 foot high mountain to a 5,000 foot bottom hole in the ground. That's what we had. It was quite a feat to see this, okay? And then you had smaller eruptions for the next 1,000 years. And they kind of put a lava field on the base of this hole and sealed it. And during that time, we also had Wizard Island erupt, and a small little cinder cone out in the middle of our collapsed caldera. Oh, by the way, this isn't a crater. Did you guys know that? This is a caldera, a collapsed volcano. So really we should be naming this place Caldera Lake National Park, not crater. But back in 1902, when it was named as a park, there was no such word as caldera. Kind of a new idea. So they called it crater. So anyhow, you had the mountain growing, blowing, falling, filling up with water. Where does water come from?
Rain.
Snow and rain.
Snow and rain. 46 feet of snow here last winter.
Ew.
Can you imagine that? Yeah. At any given time, there's about 20 feet of snow just sitting on the ground in the winter. Yeah. So that's where all the water comes from. So the lake water comes from snow and rain that fall directly on the lake surface, and the rain and snow that fall on the caldera walls. So that water is very pure. It doesn't come in as a river or a stream, nothing to bring sediments into the lake, nothing to bring pollution. So we have some of the cleanest water in a lake of anywhere in the world right here. You can drink the water right out of the lake. Now, the lodge is not allowed to do that. They have to get their water from other places. But when we're out in the boat tours, like you will be tomorrow, you'll be able to fill up your water bottle right out of the lake. Isn't that neat? Yeah, don't expect that water in your water bottle to be blue, though. It's actually pretty clear. So it's very clean water. And if you get lucky, I always tell my passengers, whoever gets a fish in their bottle of water, you know, that's a lucky sign and you get a prize. It hasn't happened yet. We'll talk about fish in a moment. So anyhow, you got our deep blue, beautiful lake. How deep is our lake? I'm glad you asked. It's 1,943 feet deep. Okay, that doesn't mean much to you, does it? But let's say out in the middle of our lake at the deepest point, we were to drop in the Eiffel Tower. On top of that, we would stack the Washington Monument. On top of that, we stack the Statue of Liberty. Her torch is still going to be about 50 feet below the water. That's 1,943 feet. So that brings up the question, why is the water blue? Okay, the depth of our lake, very deep lake. The clarity of our water, because no streams or rivers come in. Very clean, very pure water. In fact, on the boat trips, I venture to ask people, you can drop your cell phone in the water right here, and you can see it as it swirls down 100 feet. Our water is so clear. Don't take them up on that. Anyhow, so you got the clarity of the water, you got the depth of our lake. You need one more thing to make this blue water. Anybody want to venture to guess?
Sky.
Well, the sky, but the sun. The sun is actually a thing. If you notice today, early on, the lake was kind of gray color because we didn't have the bright sun coming down. Now it's a nice dark blue. So you got the sun hitting the water, the red, the yellow, and the orange wavelengths from the sun. They get absorbed into the first 40 feet of water, and they become heat. We have our crater lake hot tub, about 60 degrees at the surface. Yeah, pretty warm. But below that, it's 39 degrees, where those red, yellow, and orange wavelengths can't get down to it. But the blue wavelengths, they hit the water, and they're bouncing around in the water, trying to find the bottom of the lake. But because our lake is so deep, those blue wavelengths eventually get reflected back to us, and that's what we see as our deep blue water. So the bright sun, the clarity of our water, and the depth of our lake make it this nice blue color. Many of you ask,
There's an island that's submerged in the lake.
Yes.
Can you see that? Since the lake's so clear, can you see that?
no, not really. I wouldn't know what I was looking for. I mean, it's a lava dome down there, but it's quite a bit below the surface of the water, so it'd be hard to see it. Okay, let's talk about the fun things here. Anybody know who this character is? You will tomorrow. Who is it? The old man. Yes, the old man of the lake. So this guy's been floating around in the lake, we know, for at least 125 years. First documented. Now, 125 years ago, he looked much the same. So, I mean, guess he's been out there even longer than that. But he's a hemlock log that probably fell off the caldera walls maybe 150 years ago or so, landed in the lake. He sits about 4.5 feet above water level, about 24 feet below water level. He sits straight up and down like that. Pretty unique, isn't it? It's magical. A mystery of Crater Lake. How does he do this? How does he resist decay for all these years? One of the mysteries. Well, a hemlock log floating around in cold, clear water can last for hundreds of years. Okay? He's perfectly balanced. Down below, it just is like an iceberg, so he doesn't fall over. That's how he goes around. What isn't so easy to explain is how he controls the weather on the lake. Now, in the late 1980s, we launched a submersible submarine into the lake to see what was on the bottom of the lake. Okay, the deep rover, we call him. Okay, well, the scientists, and keep in mind the connotation, they're scientists. I am an interpretive ranger, not really a scientist. I had a 42-year career as a farmer, so now I am an interpretive ranger. But the scientists tied up the old man on Wizard Island, getting him out of the way so we wouldn't bump into the submersible. In the middle of August, we had a snowstorm. Doesn't usually happen. Until a interpretive ranger went and untied him, let him go, the weather immediately cleared up. Well, this past fall, the lake crew, scientists again, put a tracking device on him. They wanted to see what he did during the winter. Well, the old man showed the lake crew, the lake biologists, and he just went over to a cove on the far end and just stayed there for the entire winter, would refuse to move. Well, in the springtime, the tracking device broke. They took it off of him, and immediately he started moving around and the weather got very nice. So you come to your own conclusions there. The old man. Speaking of the deep rover, he went down there in the late 1980s. They wanted to see what was on the bottom of the lake. Kind of a mystery. Well, he found a few things that were interesting. Some fly larvae, some worms, some moss. No lake monster. Well, he was only able to survey about 5% of the lake bottom. So I think the lake monster, went to another area while he was down there. I'm sure he's still out there. But what he did find, which was very intriguing, was how much light was penetrating through the water. He went down 500, 1,000, or 1,000 feet down, and he was still able to look up and see the light coming down from the sun. That's unheard of in a body of water. Usually it's dark at that kind of a level, and the light was penetrating through. And what that did is the light allows moss to grow in our lake. You don't see moss above about 45 or 50 feet because the ultraviolet rays are so strong up here that they kill the moss. Okay, but from about 45 feet down to 450 feet, you got luxurious moss growing because the light can penetrate down for the moss to grow. You don't see that in any other body of water in the world. So that's what he found. What else is in our lake? We have our friendly critter, the Mazama newt. He's, a member of the rough-skin newt tribe. The rough-skin newts live throughout the world, but most rough-skin newts, rough skin, they have poison glands in their skin, and they keep themselves from getting eaten by predators. Well, our Mazama newt has lived up here for thousands of years and lost the ability to have poisonous skin because it didn't eat it. He had no predator. There's nothing here that ate it. He was top dog in the lake, the Mazama newt. He was doing great until 1890. And we decided to introduce fish into the lake. Wanted to make this into a fishing resort. Well, maybe not such a good idea. Now the fish, they didn't really flourish that well. It was hard to get down here to go fishing. But so we figured, let's give the fish something a little bit more to eat. We introduced the crayfish. Oh, a second, really bad idea. Now, because the crayfish eat our newt. So where we used to see the newt in 100% of the shoreline, carrying on its activities, eating the little algae on the rocks, just keeping the place cleaned up, keeping to itself, not causing any problems. But wherever the crayfish is now, there's no more newts. The newts are gone. Okay. So we're trying to do a captive breeding program in the newts. This has just started in the last couple of years, and we're trying to figure out if we can make it work. We'd love to get rid of the crayfish. In fact, we tried trapping them a few years ago. We trapped thousands of crayfish thinking, okay, maybe this is how we're going to do it. And the staff up here had a crawdad boil and everything. It was delicious. But we went back to the same sites the next summer, and there was 5 times as many crayfish as there were before we even started trapping, because we suddenly realized that crayfish are cannibals. They eat their young. Okay, so when we got rid of the larger adult crayfish in the traps, the young multiplied like crazy. So trapping really isn't going to work. But we're trying to come up with ideas of how we can deal with the crayfish and preserve the newt and keep them going. What else shall we talk about here? Let's see.
How do the crayfish catch the newts? Aren't they like
They
running
live
around
in the
rock?
same rocky areas. So the crayfish are living underneath the rocks. The newts live underneath the rocks. And they'll go after them. And they'll not only eat them, but they'll just harass them to the point that the newt will swim out from underneath the rock and the fish will eat them. So really the newt has no chance in this lake whatsoever until we can get rid of that crayfish. We have a limit if possible.
9 minutes to what? Ouch. It's my turn again?
It's a 30-minute rotation. Coming in? Okay.
Hey, so,
Hi.
just giving you weird vibes.
No, she was running around. She's nervous. I think it's kind of like that mid. She's kind of Oh no.